Hello everybody and welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live video series, and joining me today to share the stories behind the 10 books that influenced her the most on her life path is Nancy Myers. And Nancy founded the Orb Connection, which is a website that shares her experiences and the knowledge that she's gained from photographing orbs, a phenomenon that she was introduced to after the unexpected passing of her son Robbie in 2010. As an orb photographer and an orb medium, Nancy works with orbs to interpret the important messages they wish us to hear. Now, we've all heard about orbs, but I'm sure few of you have heard about orbs the way that Nancy understands and interacts with orbs. So we'll learn more about that as we get further into it. And if you have any questions, as always, type them in the chat window and we will get to them later on. Nancy Myers, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So now we always start with two questions. And the first question is, what do books mean to you?
It's real interesting, Sandy. When I was growing up and in school, I couldn't even finish a book. It wouldn't hold my attention. So if you were to ask me that question many years ago, I would have said, they're not that important. But now they mean everything to me because they have been my teacher. They have been my professor in what I want to learn. So they're my mentor.
So given that, how difficult or how easy was it for you to compile your 10 best list?
Sitting still for me is a little hard, always has been. But because I'm so interested and so passionate about orbs and spirituality and metaphysics, I couldn't stop reading. So it really held my attention because it resonated with me. I think the time was right.
Yeah. But how did you actually select? What criteria did you use to select these 10?
I don't think I selected the books. The books selected me.
Right.
And if I can I tell a little bit about how I got started and why these books came to me?
You absolutely can.
10 years ago, in 2010, I received a phone call that my son had unexpectedly passed while visiting his aunt and uncle in North Carolina. It was 2 days before his 28th birthday. He was healthy. There was no reason to get this phone call. And it took a while to learn what had happened. And just for the audience sake, it was kind of a perfect storm. He had a very bad cold, was taking a lot of over-the-counter cold medicines, and we think he had the H1N1. I don't know if you remember when that was going around. So it was just the perfect storm, and he passed during the night. I did wake up right at the time that he passed. He contacted me that fast. And so because it was so unexpected and because I was searching for answers as to why, what is the purpose of this? Why would he leave us? His whole life was ahead of him. He had just begun his career as a prosecutor, and I felt like it was unfair. So I thought maybe there's a bigger answer there. So I thought, well, I need to know. And because as a mom, I wasn't there when he passed, I had to find out, what did he go through? What did he feel? Where did he go? Was anybody there to help him? And so I started, the very first book that's on my list, I think, is Dr. Brian Weiss. Help me with the title.
Many Lives, Many Masters.
Thank you, because there was a couple of his. And that was my introduction to the idea that perhaps we plan our lives. And that idea was so new to me and so fantastic. So, and the more I read and the more I read his stories, I'm going, well, this kind of makes sense. It didn't help me with the loss as much, the grief of the physical loss, but it helped me with the understanding. And I think when you get an understanding of why things happen, it does help the healing. And so his first book really started then leading me down that path that, our lives, the reason we're here, are so much bigger than what we could have ever imagined. And we have so much, I don't want to say control, but input as to the direction that our lives take, and who our parents are and where we grow up, and if we come in with any disabilities, and then it mushrooms from there, because one of the greatest gifts that Robbie has given me with his passing is he's taken away the fear of dying. He's helped me understand what's going on. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. But the other thing that happened was, because of this, it started me on my spiritual path, which I believe was my true purpose. He passed when I was 55. I wasn't a spring chicken, and it's like, okay, I'm going to start now on my life purpose. But yeah, sometimes all those experiences leading up to that prepare you for that. And when I look back, I understand. So the books then, started explaining things, and the right books. I always say the right books came at the right time. If I were to read some books that I'm reading now, I would have never understood them. Back then, I was just, too ignorant.
Yeah.
But there's a progression of these books. So, and the other thing that I did, for example, on that first book, Dr. Weiss, I would read their book and I thought, okay, I need to get to know this person. If I'm going to put this much faith in this person, I'm going to find out more about them. So a lot of the books that I've recommended, I have either met the author, taken a class, done watched them do a demonstration, a workshop, and they signed my book. So I tried to have a personal relationship.
Well, it's always good to be selective and be discerning about the information you're taking in. But before we move on to the second book, why don't you tell everybody how it is that you became an orb medium and photographer, and why it is that you can see dead people in orbs and that others have never seen.
Yeah, and not just dead people, but pets and angels and guides. Yeah. But here's how it started. I've always believed in the afterlife. I never dabbled in it or had a mediumship reading or anything like that, but I would watch the shows, just, oh my gosh, if this is fantastic that people can do this. So shortly after Robbie crossed, of course, put in my path was an opportunity to go to a medium. Her name was Hollister Rand. And she picked me out of the audience and gave me a reading. And the first words out of my son's mouth were, oops. I'm going, what? Oops. But she told me, she said, do you know what orbs are? And I said, no. She said, well, that's your work together. You and Robbie are going to do work in orb photography. He's going to help the spirits on that side, and you're going to help the spirits on this side. And I'm going, I don't understand this. How can, getting a dot on a picture help anybody? Well, then it mushroomed from there. Robbie was masterful at letting me know he was with me. And then the orbs began to change. They got brighter, they got clearer, and then the faces started. I have to tell a little side story. When Robbie was little, he had a book called The Magic Eye. And it's a book where you look at it and it first just looks like a pattern, but the more you stare at it, then all of a sudden the image jumps out. And he would get that like that. And he'd show me, Mom, read, look, can't you see the giraffe? And I'm going, I can't see this, Robbie. I have no idea what you're looking at. And he goes, Mom, you have to see this. And that struck me funny. And I said, why do I have to see this? But he was training me, I think, in a way. His soul was training me to do that. So when the orbs started getting clearer and patterns and things changed, I was able to look at them like Robbie and I used to read that book, and they jumped out at me. I could see the faces. So in the beginning, I was the only one that could read the faces or see the faces. And I would describe to my sitter, okay, I see a lady here. She has a long nose. She's wearing pearls. Her hair's about here. She's probably in her 70s. And I'd look at the sitter and tears would be rolling down their eyes. And they're going, that's my grandma, you know. So I felt bad. Here they had their orb, which is great physical evidence that the spirit is by them, right? Instead of just getting a reading, here's physical proof. But then, thank goodness, the orbs kept changing and progressing. And now most of the time when the faces come in, they look like pencil drawings. So even the sitter can see them. But the next surprise was when I started hearing messages. I never, ever would have described myself as a medium. I was never that arrogant to think that I had any special gifts other than to point the camera and take a picture. But when they started talking to me and I could hear the messages and then I would relay the message, that's when it really took a turn. And that's when my path started to diverge a little bit from, okay, I have to get my answers, to now I'm in service. And that was a really important time for me when that happened. I felt so humbled and so honored to be able to do that.
Mm. And you and Robbie still communicate today?
All the time. Yeah, both through, I have a lot of friends now who are mediums. So, you know, he gives messages through them. But when I meditate, I can feel him, or he'll put something in my head. When I wrote my book, he gave me the titles of the book. He gave me the chapters of the book. He would tell me, Mom, that doesn't make sense. You got to redo that, you know. And then he lets me know that he's still with me because he shows up as a turquoise or teal color orb. And that's when I know he's still here.
Okay, well, let's move on to book number 2, which is Ask Your Guides by Sonia Choquette. At what point did you read that book and what did it do for you?
You know, that was really early on also. And again, I go back to, I don't have any gifts. How do angels, what? We have guardian angels, we have guides. What is all this? You know, that's how ignorant I was of the spiritual world. So I found her book and I started reading it. And that book really gave me hope that, okay, maybe, and in the beginning too, when I did this, it was like, okay, I want to contact my son. I want to know, you know, if I can feel him or dream. I mean, I was thrilled with dreams and he was really good coming in my dreams a lot. But when I heard that maybe I can do it outside of that, that's when I found Sonia's book. And she was such a gentle teacher, you know, and an encouraging teacher. Yes, you can do this. You can do this. And she's another person that I met and I took a workshop, and she was just as lovely as she came across in the book. And I got a lot out of her workshop. But, you know, and you hear this now more and more every day. Everybody has gifts, everybody, you know, because it's time. And so she was one of those people 10 years ago that was trying to encourage us muggles to explore that, to open up to it, and to build upon it. So you know, that was a real gentle introduction for me into meditation, into trying to realize and understand and talk to, you know, other than loved ones. You know, it introduced me to not just to the loved ones near us, but all the divine beings that are around us.
So what did your family and friends think about this when suddenly Nancy is, you know, moving into this strange woo-woo area?
You know, I am so fortunate, and I'm sure Spirit has arranged this. You know, I have the most amazing friends. I have met the most amazing friends. Most of my family understands to a point. There are some that I don't talk to anymore because they just can't wrap their heads around this. They're very limited in their views and beliefs, and that's okay. That's their journey. I'm not here to force this on anybody. Believe me, I'm only following what's been shown to me, what I've seen and what I've learned. But my friends, I've lost a few, but the friends that I have gained, it is incredible. The caliber, the compassionate people, the people that want to help each other. It's been just, I found my tribe, and that feels good. It's I have a special core group, and we call laughingly we call each other, the witches. But here's, if I can just tell this really quick story. I have these 3 dear friends, and they've been with me. They knew me when Robbie passed, and have been by my side and through all this. But as they watch me going through this, they also have opened up and discovered a lot of their spiritual gifts. So, that's been wonderful to be a part of and to witness. So, and I think that's ultimately what it's all about.
Yeah. So in leaving, your son gave you the most incredible, precious gift.
Absolutely.
Gave you yourself.
Absolutely.
Mm.
People, and I understand, and when they hear that my son crossed, and I don't say he died, the first, what we're conditioned to say is, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss." And I go, "I appreciate that, and I thank you for your sentiment, but I didn't lose him. I didn't lose him. He's still a part of my life." And I know that because, again, I dream of him, I feel him. And then when he does come in with messages through other mediums, it's to let me know of just everyday things I'm doing, that he wouldn't know unless he was watching.
Mm.
So, and that's what he wants. That's what he wants us, especially parents, to shift to is, you didn't lose your child. They're still there. And you will be together again, in Robbie's words, in a blink of an eye, because this time on earth is so short compared to, being in the spirit realm. So some people are ready to receive that. Some people aren't. But again, I'm not going to force this on anybody. I'll just put it out there, and whoever can resonate with it will.
Mm. So number 3 on your list was Your Soul's Plan by Robert Schwartz, which basically, I think, I used to know Robert Schwartz years ago. I think he was a contributor to a magazine I produced, and he wrote a book about karmic lessons, and I think he used a medium as well in compiling that book. So tell us, what was it about Robert's book?
Again, I went back to, okay, why would my son pick this life? What were the lessons? Because that was the other thing I started to learn, is we are here to learn lessons, to advance our soul, right? So when I found his book and started reading it, he got into a lot more of the past lives. And I hate this word because I think it's misused, but the karmic lessons. Do we bring something in from our past life, even a personality trait or something? And I have to tell you, this book, again, really resonated with me, really explained a lot. You have to have a little bit of faith when you read these types of books, because they're talking about past lives. There's no way to prove that. When you get a reading from a medium, and it's based on evidence of your loved one. Oh, I have your father here, and he wore glasses, and he was an electrician, and he was balding, and he had a mustache. That's evidential mediumship. You can say yes, 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 yes. But when you go to past lives, unless you're somebody famous and can go back and research that, you have to take that on faith. Now, he worked with the medium in that book, Stacy Wells, and I was fascinated by her gifts. So I did have a past life reading with her. and it was phenomenal. Even my husband wanted one, which is a whole nother story. But so we both, again, I'm reading about this woman, I'm putting my faith in this woman. And so I wanted to find out, okay, are you as good as you say you are, you know? And I also had a reading by Robert Schwartz. And it was fascinating, and I'm not going to go into it. But when you get to that part of your spiritual path and your spiritual education, that's when your faith comes in. And you know, if you, I mean, I know a lot of people that no, there's no reincarnation. I don't believe it, you know, and okay, then I know my conversation stops. But a lot of people will say, you know, I don't know where this comes from, but I could pick up any instrument and play it without any lessons, you know. Why do you think that is? So that was what that book did for me.
So number 4, We Don't Die by Joel Martin, who you said it's the true story of one of the most renowned psychic mediums of our time, George Anderson. I've not heard of George Anderson, so tell me about him.
George Anderson, and again, I met him and I went to one of his demonstrations. George Anderson was here in the States, at least. I know you're in England, but here in the States, George Anderson was one of the vanguard, one of the leaders, one of the first people to put himself out there publicly and say, I can do this. And that book, for people that are going, I don't know about mediumship, I don't know. Well, he is one of the most tested mediums there are. The military would test him, he would go on TV shows and they would test him, you know, so he was, he's very gifted. He's been around for quite a while. And, but when you read about the tests and the blind tests and his answers, I mean, you go, you know what, this eliminates guesswork. You know, when you get, you know, 80, 90, 100% of their questions about somebody, or he would do things where he would remote view and describe a scene, and he had never been there, and it was perfectly described. You know, you have to sit back and go, wow, here's the proof I was looking for. So George Anderson was really a pioneer. He was up against tremendous ridicule, you know, just like a lot of the mediums were, you know, the Sylvia Browns, the, you know, John Edwards, the James Von Proggs, you know, God bless them for being strong enough to put themselves out there and making this mediumship more acceptable. But George was one of the originals, I think, and no one has been put through the battery of tests that he's been put through.
So number 5 is Into the Light by Dr. John Lerma. And now we're getting a little bit more, should we say mainstream in a way? Because you say this book knocked your socks off because it's a beautiful compilation of stories of the final moments of hospice patients under the care of Dr. Lerma. So tell us about that one.
You know, and it did knock my socks off. And I mentioned earlier, one of my pains was that I was not there when my son passed, you know. And so I thought, okay, was he scared? Did it hurt? You know, what happened? And then this book came to me. And Dr. Lerma is, he was in, I believe it's Houston, Texas, and he ran the hospice center that the Bushes set up, the senior Bushes. And he kept having these fantastic experiences talking to these people who knew they were going to pass. So, you know, they would tell him, oh, I see my mother standing in the corner. Oh, I hear angels singing. And he'd watch them reach up. He'd watch them talk to them. Now, these were people from all walks of life, from ministers to atheists. And they had very similar experiences. And so he wanted to share that. He wanted to make it very clear these people were not on drugs. They were not hallucinating. And here's a beautiful story that really touched me. And that's why this book really touched me. There was a man that he was watching, and he knew, of course, at hospice, that he was passing in a week or so. So he went in to visit him, and the man was holding this beautiful feather, this beautiful white feather. And Dr. Lerma said to him, "Where did you get that feather?" And the man answered, "The angels gave it to me, and I want to give it to you." And so Dr. Lerma grabbed it, or took it from him, thanked him. And now Dr. Lerma had no idea, did it come from the pillow, but it was a big white feather. So he put it in a plastic bag or a bag, and then he locked it in his safe. And when the man passed and his family came, Dr. Lerma said, "Oh, I have something of his. I'm sure he would want you to have it." And he went in his safe, took out the bag, reached in to get the feather, and it was gone. So here's how this resonated with me. One of the hardest things that I had to do was clean out Robbie's clothes. And I was having a really hard time. So I was carrying the bags into the garage, and I looked down, and there on the ground was this beautiful white feather, and it was actually in a little puddle of oil. And I went, "Oh, this reminds me of the white feather that Dr. Lerma saw. I'm going to pick this up." So I did. I picked it up and I put it in my pocket, and I said, "I'm going to show it to my husband when I get home." So after that emotional day, I went home, and my husband said, "Well, how are you doing?" And I said, "It was rough." And I said, "Oh, but let me tell you what happened." And I reached in to get my feather, and it was gone. So that feather was for me. It was just for me. But Dr. Lerma's stories reassured me that we never, ever pass alone. So anyone who's gone through what I've gone through, or has someone that is terminally ill, I think this book would bring tremendous comfort.
I would be very interested to know if the Bushes ever read his book, and if they did, what they thought of it.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know, but he's in Texas, so he's one I didn't meet. And I think he has another book out, by the way. So if you look that up, there'll be a book or two there.
So number book is Lisa Williams, The Survival of the Soul.
I love this book. And again, I thought I was going to get into more of the soul planning when we're like in between lives. That's what it's all about, life between lives, right? And I started reading her book, and I went, whoa, because the amount of information in that book, especially for a neophyte like me entering into the spiritual world and the mediumship world, she laid it all out on the line in very layman's terms, how she got into it, how the messages come, how they talk to her, how she hears, how they convey messages, talking to guides, talking to angels. And then she moves on to, okay, this is, she does get into a little bit of the life planning. But what I also liked about her book was she got into pretty deep what happens after we die. And that was really kind of my first experience of going to the other side. The life reviews, talking with greeting our loved ones, talking with those who played a role in our life, and really understanding the big picture, the different levels, the healing chambers. I mean, I'm writing this and my eyes getting bigger and bigger. I'm going, wow, this is so amazing. So is this what my son went through? And he confirmed a lot of this through readings. Yeah. So that book kind of, it's a lot of information, but it's like, the ABCs of mediumship and what happens to us when we pass.
Mm.
So I'm sorry, I haven't met her yet, but she's on my bucket list to take a workshop from.
So book number 7, lovely book, The Afterlife of Billy Fingers, Annie Kagan. I've interviewed Annie, and that's a really interesting book.
When I read that book, and that book is about Billy Fingers passed, and soon after he passed, he literally started coming to his sister and talking to her. They would have full-on conversations. I don't believe she had any mediumship experiences before her brother passed. And so I'm reading this book and I actually got a little upset at Robbie. I'm going, hey, dude, if Billy Fingers can talk to his sister, why can't you talk to me like that? You know, but, and then he explained why he couldn't. But Billy Fingers, and then the journey that the two of them go to, you know, Billy Fingers it starts when he first passed and goes, whoa, you know, I'm out of my body, you know, what happened? And, you know, and then the progression and the expansion of his soul and what he describes of where he gets to go to and get to see. And he took his sister along with him. So, you know, that explained again a lot about, number one, we take our personalities with us. Her brother never lost his cheekiness and, you know, his sarcasm, and even though he was on the other side. But then what happens when we get there? And again, anybody that's looking for proof of life or I hear a lot of people say, well, none of us really knows what happens when we die. We do. You know, if you just listen to the people, there's been so many near-death experiences and afterlife communications. It's out there if you want to do the research and you want to read.
So number 8 is Hollister and I'm Not Dead, I'm Different.
You know, and I just love that title. What that book is about. Hollister is a medium. She was, like I said, one of the very first mediums that I went to, and we are now friends. She's very gifted. And, but part of her ministry, if you will, of being a medium is children in spirit. And she reconnects them, you know, with their parents to say, hey, I'm still here. I'm still around. And the one, I think, young man, I can't remember his name yet, but he came in and said to his mom, I'm not dead. I'm just different. And then he explains, we become beings of light and we become energy. You know, I do a lot of orb presentations and demonstrations, and I tell people want to know, well, what are orbs? Ultimately, I tell them, if I have to break it down, orbs are energy. We're capturing our true essence. And that's what everybody on the other side is trying to tell us. You know, we are different. We've shed the physical bodies, but we are still, and that bond of love, that string of love that goes from heart to heart is never broken. And whenever we say their name or talk with our loved ones with joy, you know, that brings them closer. That's why part of my mission is to heal from others from grief, because when you're in grief, it's harder for the spirits to get close because it's such a lower vibration. So when Hollister wrote that, I mean, just when parents hear that and then they hear specific information that their children are bringing through, the weight that is lifted, that you realize, okay, number one, I didn't lose my child. Number two, my child is happy. My child is healthy. My child is whole. We as parents, that's what we want for our kids. You know, we want them to be safe. We want them to be better. We want them to be loved. And that's what they're telling us through mediums like Hollister. So I love that book.
Number 9, Soul Survivor by Bruce and Andrea Leninger.
Yeah. You know, I earlier said, you know, we can't do proof of past lives unless someone comes in as someone famous or they can document it. This book was a fascinating story of a little boy who started, I believe, when he was 2 years old, having these recurrent dreams and visions of being a pilot in the war. I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but their parents did not believe in reincarnation. And this is the journey of what happened. I believe it goes through 6 or 7 years of this happening. But in the end, they were able to document or verify through documents everything that the little boy said. They took him to a reunion of the pilots that he used to fly with during the war. And he walked up to everyone when he was just a little boy and knew all their names and greeted them. But the most fascinating thing to me was they never found his plane. He went down. And this little boy told them where to look for his plane, and they found it. So that to me, is like, whoa, this isn't just a bad dream. This isn't, and there's been more and more and more and more of these stories where these children are coming in, remembering their past lives. And I mean, they even made a TV show about it. I think it was called The Ghost Within My Child. And there's another one where a little boy remembered he was Lou Gehrig, and that's another fascinating book. But why is this happening? Because things are changing. Because when these children now come in, they come in with stronger memories of where they came from. Because you've heard the saying, the veil is thinning.
Yeah.
And so they don't lose their connection. But that book was fascinating only because of the documentation and the whole process of how then it convinced his parents and changed their way of thinking.
There have been many books that have, told stories similar to this. There was a very famous one of a child in India, and kept saying that, she wanted to go back to her husband. And eventually the family tracked down, and she recognized her husband, and she started telling him things, and both families couldn't believe it, but it was, incontrovertible.
Yeah.
And it is so fascinating. I remember my grandson, I think he was about 2.5. And where my son, my other child, his uncle lives, there's a windmill, an old windmill. And every time Joel used to come visit, he would look at that windmill and he would say to his mother, I used to live there. And she would say, what do you mean you used to live there? And he gave her the name of somebody that he said, when I think the name was something like Josephus, which is a biblical name. How does a child of 2.5 come out with things like that?
Yeah. They're too young to make that up.
Yes, they are. They are. So, and that leads very nicely into number 10, which is an application of impossible things by Natalie Sudman.
Yeah, and Natalie is another one that I had a reading from. I was just astounded at her mediumship gifts. That's the other thing. I'm a bit of a medium junkie, but what I found is every medium has their own niche, their own specialty, their own abilities to work with. Well, Natalie's book came to me in a really strange way, and I picked it up. And Natalie is an incredible human being, very intellectual, and she was a civilian employee for the Army. And she went over to Iraq, I think it was. Don't hold me to that. Anyway, she was in a vehicle, and the vehicle hit one of the landmines, the devices that explode when the vehicles go over it. And she was quite injured, and she actually passed and then came back. But when she was over there, she describes who she talked to, the information they wanted to know. And then they told her, it's not time for you to go. But yet she knew this. She goes, okay, yeah, I'm going back. So she walks between two worlds. And what she says is, everybody wants their souls to grow, but we have to remember on the other side, there's an infinite number of souls. They can't all incarnate on earth at the same time. But there's a wonderful cooperation on the spirit world where even if, like Natalie is here on earth, going through her lessons, she literally then goes back and tells this auditorium filled place with other spirits of her experiences, and they kind of live through that. And she helps them, and then she comes back. And it was a fascinating experience. Again, another wrinkle as to why we're here, why we go back, why we have helpers. And I've never met anyone like Natalie, who just, when she did my reading, she goes, okay, let me check. And she just scoots over there, and you watch her, and then she comes back and she goes, well, here's what they said, So and it's not a long book, but it's a fascinating read. Again, it's another wrinkle of the spiritual realm that we know so little about.
Yeah. So that's your 10 books. If somebody came to you recently bereaved, looking for answers, just as you were, which of those 10 would you recommend they read first?
Well, one of two. If you were like me, not able to be, and this is happening more with COVID, right? We're not able to be with our loved ones when they pass. Then I would recommend Dr. Lerma's, just as reassurance. I watch these people on television who have lost parents, grandparents, wives, brothers, sisters, and they go, I couldn't be there. I couldn't be there. But their loved one was still surrounded by so much love and so many beautiful beings. So I think that would help. The second one is if you're a little bit beyond that and you're just trying to figure out the whys. Why would this happen to me? This isn't fair. My son was just getting going in life, or my son, should never have been on that motorcycle, or whatever it is. Then read Dr. Brian Weiss's book. Why some people come in that have disabilities, why some people come in with horrible ailments, why some people come in who seem just blessed, or whatever it is. That just helps. It's a start.
Well, here's a question. Robbie, you said that the first thing Robbie said when he came through a medium was oops.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I didn't mean that to happen. So how did you ever ask, how does he deal with the fact that he passed sooner than he was supposed to?
That's a really interesting question. And this goes to a little bit more advanced of what I've learned. A lot of us, when we come into this life, okay, so let's say we're in the spirit realm and we're planning our life, or we're seeing what's going to happen. We're shown signposts. We're shown certain scenarios. But when we get here, there is always, always, always free will. So we can change it to a certain extent. What I have also learned is we all have exit points. I heard through many mediums, and it was confirmed in many different ways. Robbie had 3, and this was his final one. This was he waited till the very last one. And when I think about it, there were two other times when it was this close that he was killed in an automobile accident. So I believe that those were his 2 other times. So he waited till the very end. His soul, my son loved being alive. He lived life to the fullest. And, but I mean, he understands now. He never was mad. He never felt, did he want to stay here longer? Yeah, but he never felt cheated. And the reason he said, oops, was because, how he was treating his cold. He took too many over-the-counter cold medicines. He was drinking. He was on some medication. He was sick. He wasn't taking care of himself properly. And so that's why he said, oops, Mom, sorry. But, and if he hadn't gone at that time, I think he would have gone shortly thereafter. But when I think about it, for him to have passed there, and God bless my brother and sister-in-law, for taking care of that for me. He lived with his sister, and had she found him or I'd found him, that would have been different. So I think he did it as gently as he could.
So has Robbie ever indicated how long he's going to hang around working with you? I mean, recently we spoke to Jeff Hoppy on this show, and Jeff was saying he used to channel Tobias. And then at some point, Tobias decided that he was going to reincarnate, come back into a body. So he left Jeff. Others, Saint Germain Damas came in. Is Robbie going to reincarnate anytime soon?
That's not an easy answer, because I believe we have an oversoul, if you will, on the other side. And when we are here incarnate in earth, not all of our soul comes, just a part of it. I also believe that it's real. I'm trying to keep this really simple. Well, let me tell you what Robbie has said to me. First of all, he promised me he would never leave me. And Robbie is very, very good at walking between two worlds. So he still is doing what he needs to do on the other side. Of course, spirits can be in multiple places at the exact same time because there is no time over there, which is a whole nother concept. But he has assured me that our work together is important and he will not leave me. Now, if his soul decides to incarnate, then, I still have Robbie. Robbie's personality is there for always. His personality is not going to reincarnate. His soul might send another piece of it to incarnate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, in a way, you're talking about aspects, aren't you? I mean, it's often been said, people question, oh, I don't believe in reincarnation. All these people, I've met 50 people who claim to be Cleopatra.
Yeah.
How is that possible? And many people say, well, it's the aspect, the energetic aspect, that you can carry of that person. And many people can carry an energetic aspect.
Well, it's just like, when we do our DNA and we go back generations, and follow our ancestral line, how many of us are related, so yeah, that's another way of spreading that energy. Man has been around, a bazillion years. So yeah, but I told Robbie, I said, you can't ever leave me. I'll be a puddle, just, and I tell people, I have been very, very blessed to have a son who is so active with me. It really helped me, to cope with this.
Yeah. So you've written 2 books about your experiences. You got copies there? Would you like to show us?
I do.
Tell us the titles.
Yeah, and again, this is the first one. It's called Entering the Light Fantastic, and it's discovering life after life through orbs. This really tells in a lot more detail how it started and how it progressed. I tell people I had a ghostwriter because literally Robbie I'd be typing away and I go, what did I just write? And then I'd read it and I go, I don't remember typing that. So he had a hand in both of these books. Robbie was a very gifted writer. He won awards from grade school through being a prosecutor for his briefs. So I told him, because he told me, Mom, you have to write a book. And I said, I don't know how to write a book. I've never written a book. He said, I'm going to help you. And so that's what I said, he gave me the title, and I would sit in meditation when I'd finish a chapter and I go, okay, where are we going next? And the name of the chapter would come in my head, and then we'd go from there. The second book, this just came out, and he wanted me to stay with the same theme. So he said, Encircled by the Light Fantastic. And this is a deeper journey into the light with Orbs. This gets a little more woo-woo. It gets a little more into the fantastic side of spirit. But I say that, but there's over 120 pictures in here to prove what I'm talking about. So you can see, I talk about a lot of stuff. I talk about fairies, I talk about dragons, I talk about, I've traveled all over the world taking orb photos, and I talk about, the experiences and the visions. And so this book is a little bit, I say this book is beyond Orbs 101. So yeah, but Robbie again had his hand in that, and I really didn't want to write this book because this one took me a long time, and I went, okay, I'm done. And then he said, okay, on to book 2. Oh, do I not get a break? So I kind of put it off, and he would have none of it. He was bugging the heck out of me to get that done. And with Sandie's help and patience, we did it.
Well, yeah, I guess we have to be a bit transparent here. I did help Nancy with the final production of her book. And, fascinating stories, though, absolutely fascinating. And what is so interesting for me, as somebody who read the raw manuscripts and then read the finished, books, is how much your writing has changed and improved and evolved between book 1 and book 2. So, tell Robbie that he's getting to be an even better writer, and he's bringing you along with him. But one of the things I wanted to talk about too is how this has changed your life. I mean, we all have tragedies in life, and, some tragedies are more tragic than others. But as a mother, to lose one's child, I think, is such a devastating experience. And I don't know how people can ever be the same after that. But what Robbie has done for you is that he's opened up a whole new world for you. I mean, you've traveled far and wide, places you never would have gone before. You've seen, Roslin Chapel, you've been to the Bosnian pyramids, you've been to Egypt, and you've taken your camera with you and photographed orbs there, and you've grown so much in the last 10 years because Robbie gave you that gift.
Yeah. My friend channels Robbie, and we have a little series on YouTube, channeling Robbie. And in the last session, he came through to talk about the depth of parental love, and that the loss of a child is the greatest loss that we can experience. And what happened to me is, yes, I went through that loss, and it was, I mean, when I heard it on the phone, I just let out this blood curdling scream I didn't even know I was capable of, because it touches you in places so deep. But then as I progressed, and Robbie, again, through his life, I tried to help him and teach him. And now the roles have reversed, and he's teaching me. And he's taught me so much about the bigger reason of existence, that this work has taken it, how's it affected me? It's taken it outside of me. In other words, I'm not here on this planet for Nancy Myers to get a bigger house, to get a bigger car, to get notoriety, to whatever. That's not important. The important part is to know that we are all connected. What one does to the other, you do to yourself. And it sounds so trite, but just little things, just, opening the door, saying thank you, telling someone that they look nice today, making a phone call out of the blue just to check in on a friend. Those are spiritual things too. And but that's what it has done for me, is it's changed my priorities. If I had to put it in a nutshell, it has changed my priorities. And I feel like, okay. And the other side of that, Sandie, is when we do that, and we live in love and we live in gratitude, then that's what we attract. Then our lives just become better and better and better. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to force anything, because then you're working with spirit. You're in resonant with spirit, and you're working together. And that's so much powerful than trying to do this by yourself.
And now your mediumship, you're channeling, you're channeling another being.
Yeah. In my second book here, Encircled by the Light, Fantastic, I talk about what happened to me in Egypt. And when I came back, I started channeling. I talked earlier about our oversoul, or our master guide, or however you want, whatever term you want to use it. And so she, because it's a she, it's a female energy. They don't have sexes up there. Started talking through me. Her name is Leonini, which means little lion. And so I sit and now, first I tried to write what she would say after I came out of my trance, but I would lose a lot of it. So I said, okay, I'm going to record this. And I said, can you use my voice? And I sound like me, but I use words, I use phrases that I would never use. And now it's on a recorder. I have over 160 channelings that I've done in the last 2 years. And I'm putting a book together called The Wisdom of Leonini, Discovering Our True Selves. And it's just every day, a paragraph of guidance, how to reconnect with spirit, what's important, what to do when you're feeling sad, what to do when you feel separated, but I like it because it's in plain speak. It's anyone, you don't have to have a spiritual education to read her guidance. So hopefully, in the next couple of months, that'll be out.
So when you look back over the last decade and look at how far you've come, what do you think?
First of all, I have to tell you, when Robbie passed, I said, how am I going to get through day one? And the firsts of everything is tough. That first year, the first Christmas, the first birthday, the first Thanksgiving, the first, that's tough. And you're pretty much in shock almost. And then the years start flying by. And then Robbie was wonderful at okay, Mom, we're going to get busy. So he diverted my attention from that. And now it's gone by. Here I am 10 years and I can't believe it. It's like, that's impossible. It can't be 10 years. I couldn't survive 10 years without him, but I did. And, that's been a really amazing part of it. I get up every morning. I never feel like I've reached the plateau though. I know every day I learn something. So I get up every morning and I say, okay, Spirit, what are we doing today? And it almost never fails. I learn something, I meet somebody new, I experience something. And so, it's, the journey is so enjoyable. You hear that a lot, but it truly is. It's the journey. And I hope I'm not done until I'm done on Earth.
Wow, what a story. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine how one would get through that. But having Robbie to help you get through it, having his presence there, and to be able to look at life in a whole new way, I mean, it truly is a miraculous gift. And thank you for sharing that story with us. It's important that, we get to hear these stories. And also thank you for sharing your books. We do have some comments. If anyone's got any questions, now's the time to post them and I'll ask them on your behalf. While we're giving people a little bit of time to do that, a little fun piece we always do at the end is, that when I asked you to compile your 10 best, I asked you for some keywords. words that you would use to describe yourself: photographer, medium, alchemist, mystic, believer in magic, and friend of the fairies. Love that one. These are words that, 10 years ago would never have been in your lexicon. Give us one more. And what I want is something quirky, intimate, something that gives us an insight into who Nancy is, that maybe only Rob, your husband, Robbie, your son, or your dear, which friends would say about you?
Oh boy, I'm going to have to leave those friends out of it. Yeah. No, let's see. One quirky word that I did not use.
Something that sums you up. Yeah, come on, the real Nancy behind everything.
It's not quirky, but it's just this inner child has been awakened. I thought, you get to be an adult and you can't act like a kid anymore. And in fact, Robbie's come through. Mom, approach this with that childlike wonder. Don't expect anything. Don't steer anything. Just go, oh, and so, that I'm now childlike, if that makes sense.
That's a beautiful thing to be, to look at the world through a child's eyes. Is phenomenal, and it is such a huge reminder to us. We rarely do it. We rarely do it.
And when you do that without expectation.
Yeah, it's just wonder. I remember holding my grandson when he was about 5 months old, and he was looking out of the window at the trees with such awe. And then the following day, he looked at the trees with such awe again. It was like each day it was the first time, and we lose that.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame, because we forget to look with the child's eyes. And I think that one of the things that comes through your books is that childlike wonder. And, it's what makes them such fun to read and so special. Yeah. Okay. So when will you talked about Leonini. Are you publishing Leonini's messages?
Yes, I'm in the process of doing that now. It will be a book of about 100 of my favorite of her messages, and I hope to have that out by spring.
And are you sharing those on YouTube as well?
They're not on YouTube. I have a Facebook page called, the name of my Facebook page is The Orb Connection. I also have a website called theorbconnection.com. And then on YouTube, it's called Entering the Light Fantastic. And those are the channel sessions where my friend actually brings Robbie in and channels him.
Well, Nancy Myers, thank you so much for sharing your 10 best spiritual books with us. Thank you for joining us today. It's an honor to know you, Nancy.
Well, thank you. Right back at you, my dear friend. Thank you so much.
So again, that's the orbconnection.com. Do go and have a look at those photographs. They're quite phenomenal. And thank you to everybody for joining us. If you want to be the first to be notified of these events or to see the videos, don't forget to join the No BS Spiritual Book Club private Facebook group. And you can also visit the video page at the No BS spiritualbookclub.com, where you can see all of the video interviews that we do. Nancy's will be posted in about a week's time. And you can also get MP3 recordings of them if you'd like to listen to them on a iPhone or iPad or something while you're traveling. And you can find those at Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, and many other podcast sites. Next week, we're going to have paleoanthropologist turned shaman, Dr. Hank Wesselman, who is an absolutely fascinating man. And he'll be here to share his 10 best spiritual books. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next